Hello, we welcome you to this Bible study of the Banking Blessings Ministry. My name is Goodluck Ofebu, and this is my wife,
Obi Ofebu.
And we have with us today, visiting from Dallas, Linda Obi. Well, we welcome you to our continuing study on responding to adversity. We as Christians and as people run into adversities, run into conditions that are adverse to us, in which things are not going so well for us. And the way we respond affects a lot of things that can happen within the adversity and how we may come out of it. And luckily we have several accounts in the Bible of real people that experience adversity and conquered it in different ways. Today we look at the Shunammite woman who experienced adversity due to loss of a child and loss of possessions. But she remained faithful, and her faith, because of her faith, everything she lost, starting with the child, was restored to her. She ended up better off than she was at the beginning. As I said, we are going to learn about the Shunammite woman. She had compassion on a stranger that she didn't know. Somebody she didn't know just met and invited him over to have a meal. And this led her to the man of God. The person that she had this interaction with happened to be man of God Elisha. And her compassion to Elisha and the way Elisha felt about the interaction he received there, he called the woman and blessed her. And the woman got a son. But we will find out that that having a son was the beginning appeared to be the beginning of her problem. Because soon after, as the son was growing up, he suddenly died and was, of course, brought back to life, and we're going to see the role that her faith played in bringing the son back to life. We will also find that several maybe months or years later on, she sustained a lot of loss. She had to relocate from her place and lost her property and all her family possession. But all of these were restored to her, and we'll see the role that her faith played in all of this. But everything that happened to her illustrates conquering adversity with unwavering faith. And we're going to take our lessons from 2 Kings chapter 4 and chapter 8. Very short sections, but there will be a lot of reading. Before we proceed, do you want to say something to introduce what we're doing?
Like I said, I would like to extend my greetings to our listeners and those who join us in this Bible study. This series, Coping with Adversity, has been an eye-opener for me, because it's taking us through different types of adversities that we face as human beings and in life, real life, because this is about real people living in a real world. There's none that you will say was so supernatural that you would say the adversity was not tangible. They were all tangible things we could feel and see. But sometimes things happen to us and we'll say, my case is not the same as your case. You don't even know what I'm going through. But by the time you look through this series and see how the people involved overcame adversity, one or two or three things always reverberates. You see, the things that help them to overcome the adversity, which tells me one thing, that no matter what you face, once you've put your faith in God, focus on God, unwavering faith, and seeking Him in every step you take, you will overcome that adversity, no matter what it is.
Yes.
So it will be interesting to look at the Shunammite woman's story.
Okay.
Case.
Yeah. So let's proceed. Well, as I said, the Shunammite woman encountered a stranger in her area. This is somebody, a man of God, Elisha, had come, was passing through the area, of course, interacted with the people, but the Shunammite woman really didn't know who he was. All she saw was a stranger, and she offered him food. Convinced, in fact, we'll see in the Bible that in fact she persuaded him to have food with them, with his family. So the man ate there. But what we find was subsequently, each time that Elisha came to that area, he went to their home to have food, which means that he felt comfortable. Then at some point, the woman recognized him as a man of God, not because Elisha told her, but something in Elisha's behavior informed her that there was something special about Elisha. So she talked to her husband, and they built an attachment to their house for Elisha, so that each time he came around, he came and slept there as if it was his rental home. Let us read about this from 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 8 through 10. And my wife will start the reading, and we pass to Linda and back, and that's how we're going to go. Okay.
So, 2 Kings chapter 4, reading from verse 8, and this is the New King James Version.
Mm-hmm.
Now it happened one day that Elisha went to Shunem, where there was a notable woman, and she persuaded him to eat some food. So it was, as often as he passed by, he would turn in there to eat some food.
Okay. Linda, 9.
And she said to her husband, "Look now, I know that this is a holy man of God, who passes by us regularly. Please, let us make a small upper room on the wall, and let us put a bed for him there, and a table and a chair and a lampstand, so it will be, whenever he comes to us, he can turn in there."
Okay, so let us just go through what happened here. The Shunammite woman provided food to a stranger, and they made the stranger feel welcome. The stranger really felt welcome, so that the next time he came across the area, he would go to their house and have food. Then he did this over and over until one day the woman convinced her husband to build an attachment to their home and said, "Please, this man that comes our way, I believe that this man is a holy man of God. Let us build an attachment for him. Let us make a home. Let us welcome him into our home. Let us provide him shelter." This is very interesting, because this is like a textbook example of compassion. Remember, let us recall from what Christ teaching about compassion in Matthew 25, 34 to 35, where he talked about providing food to somebody that is hungry and providing shelter to somebody that is a stranger. Let us read Matthew 25, verse 34. Honey, you read.
Matthew 25, verse 34. Then the king will say to those on his right hand, "Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in.
I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was somebody in need, and you provided for my need." In this case, it was the example matched Christ's example of food and drink and shelter. But really, it was somebody that had a need. The woman saw somebody, recognized his need. The man didn't ask her for anything. She recognized his need, made an offer to him, offered it to him in a way that made him feel comfortable. And he came back over and over, and they became friends. They welcomed him into their home. Well, the next thing that happened was Elisha asked the Shunammite woman what he could do for her. Elijah had a servant called Gehazi. So he always, in this particular interaction, and which I find very interesting, he talked to the woman through his servant Gehazi. So he said Gehazi called the woman came, stood by the door, she didn't come inside. Then Gehazi asked her what she wanted, and she said she had everything she needed, essentially, that she lived among her people, that she didn't need anything. But then Gehazi observed and told Elisha that the woman did not have a son and that her husband was already old. Then Elisha said, okay, by this time next year, you will hold a son in your hand, you will have a son. The woman, I believe she was happy, but she actually protested and said, please don't raise my hope, don't make this kind of promise. But yes, within 1 year, exactly as Elisha said, she conceived and had a son. Amen. Let us read about this in 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 11 to 17. And we'll start with Linda.
And it happened one day that he came there, and he turned in to the upper room and lay down there. Then he said to Gehazi his servant, call this Shunammite woman. When he has called her, she stood before him.
And he said to him, say now to her, look, you have been concerned for us with all this care. What can I do for you? Do you want me to speak on your behalf to the king or to the commander of the army? She answered, I dwell among my own people.
14.
So he said, what then is it to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, actually she has no son and her husband is old. So he said, call her. When he had called her, he stood in the doorway.
Okay.
Then he said, about this time next year, you shall embrace a son. And she said, no, my lord, man of God, do not lie to your maidservant. But the woman conceived and bore a son when the appointed time had come, of which Elisha had told her.
So she gave birth to a son. The son grew up and was growing up like a normal child. And then one day he went out to the field with his father. And there in the field he had a headache, a severe headache. He complained, and the complaint was so it showed he really had a problem, he really needed help. So the man sent him home with one of the servants and said, take him to his mother. They took him home to his mother, and at about noon, he died in her mother's arms. Let us read from 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 18 to 20.
Is it me starting?
Lost count now.
It's
Linda. Go ahead. 2 Kings 4:18.
And the child grew. Now it happened one day that he went out to his father to the reapers. And he said to his father, my head, my head. So he said to a servant, carry him to his mother.
Go on.
When he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon and then died.
Yeah. So the son died. And this is when the faith of the Shunammite woman came alive. Because imagine somebody, a woman whose son died, you would expect her to start crying, you would expect her to, oh my God, what happened? Why did this? She just carried him. She remembered that the man of God has a room in their house. And for her, that was a step to God. So she just carried him, put him on the bed, and then came out and called her husband and said, okay, I need to go and see the man of God. Get a donkey, get transportation ready for me. The transportation at that time was a donkey and somebody to drive the donkey. And the man asked her, why are you going? I mean, it's not a new moon, it's not the Sabbath. Why are you suddenly going to see the man of God? She just said, it is well. Told her husband not to worry and said, it is well. Then she she rode off and went to look for Elisha. What is important here is that the woman looked for, that is her first reaction was to look for God and say, okay, I didn't ask for a child, you gave me a child, I don't want, my child is coming back to me. So she believed that God would bring her son back. But her way to God was to go to Elisha, to find Elisha, because it was Elisha that prayed and brought and gave her the son. It was a blessing that came out of the mouth of Elisha. So she didn't give up the blessing. She just went straight to Elisha, and we are going to read about it to see what happened when she got to Elisha.
Before
go ahead.
we go to read about it, what strikes me here, because sometimes it's how people exhibit their faith is always subtle. Some people would be expecting to say, this woman will cry out to God and say, God, my child is dead. Come and you will heal my child and all that. But it's remarkable to me that she did not even tell her husband that this child is dead.
No.
She just, went straight to where Elisha's room, which to her, she knows this is a holy man. Yes. It's like, a sanctuary we have prepared for this holy man. It's a place where I can meet God. Yes. And kept the child. She could have left the child in any other room, but she took this child. It's an exhibition of her faith to do. She didn't say, it represents seeking God first before you start on your own agenda of addressing the problem.
Yes.
Sometimes we have gone far in trying to address the problem before we remember that we have not even sought the presence of God or how to handle this. So these steps beyond being her faith, the faith that she has, it represents to me her quest. Is like seeking the face of God. What should I do? Calling in God first.
Yes.
She didn't tell her husband. Up till now, I'm not even sure the husband, by the time we get to the end, the husband knew the child was dead.
Exactly.
There was no indication. Yes.
So, because we always talk about inquire of God how you should go about this adversity.
Yeah.
This to me represents that.
Yes.
So.
Yes, she went straight to God. Let us read about it. Go ahead, please.
Yes,
go ahead, please. Yeah.
What I want to add here is about the Shunammite woman herself. Her faith or the role she played or her life tells a lot about a Christian woman, a Christian mother, a Christian wife, a virtuous woman, like the book of Proverbs said it. This woman, if you read from the beginning where we read from verse 8, it was this woman that made the move first that drew Elisha into their family.
Yes.
The woman, she started by cooking food for the man of God, even without knowing that Elisha was a man of God. Yeah. And after cooking, it's like the grace of God, because I believe that God laid it in her heart. And when God saw that she was already doing that part, the grace of God increased, the wisdom of God in her life increased, for her to know that this man of God, yes, we are feeding him, but after feeding him, we don't know of his whereabouts, we don't know where he goes. Okay, now my husband, can we increase a step further? Can we make somewhere for him to be sleeping? And that was how it came about that he sleeps in that house. And because of the wisdom of God, or that he obeyed the God that put it in his heart, that was why she even has a place to take the child when the child was dead.
Yes.
Because imagine she did not obey God that time.
Yeah.
Where will she take that child? Okay, now, another thing I want to bring out is when this child was complaining of headache, he went to his dad. I'm not trying to put anybody down, but what I'm trying to present is the importance of having a Christian mother. If every woman has a role to play in the house, bringing the family closer to God, standing in the gap, spiritually. Because the father was busy. The father did not ask the child, why are you having it? Did not even ask anything. He just called the reapers and said, please take this child to the mother. As if the mother is the magician that would change every situation. But thank God that the mother, she knows what to do. Imagine if she did not know what to do, what would have happened? So every woman needs to know God. Stand in the gap. Pray for your children. Be spiritually alert. Because the fathers, they are trying, but most of them are so busy, trying to make ends meet in the family, that the woman has to spiritually, it's the role of the fathers too, but the way life is, women will have to stand up and be more spiritual. Because that's why she knew what to do.
Yes.
She went back to where she started, to the bed, to that upper room they built, and she laid the child on that bed that the man of God has been laying. It's a place that she knew that whenever she goes into, she connects with God. So that's what I want to bring out.
Yes, the woman was definitely a strong connection, a strong representative connecting her family to God.
To God, yeah.
Okay, let us read from 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 21.
Okay, 2 Kings 4, verse 21. And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, shut the door upon him, and went out. Then she called to her husband and said, please send me one of the young men and one of the donkeys, that I may run to the man of God and come back.
Okay, Linda.
23.
So he said, why are you going to him today? It is neither the new moon nor the Sabbath. And she said, it is well. Then he saddled a donkey and said to her servant, drive and go forward. Do not slacken the pace for me unless I tell you.
And so she departed and went to the man of God at Mount Carmel. So it was when the man of God saw her afar off that he said to his servant Gehazi, look, the Shunammite woman. Please run now to meet her and say to her, is it well with you? Is it well with your husband? Is it well with the child? And she answered, it is well.
Now when she came to the man of God at the hill, she caught him by the feet, but Gehazi came near to push her away. But the man of God said, let her alone, for her soul is in deep distress, and the Lord has hidden it from me, and has not told me. So she said, did I ask a son of the Lord? Did I not say, do not deceive me?
And the mother of the child said, as the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. So he arose and followed her.
Well, I call that defiant faith, but let us proceed. Yes, what happened next was the woman, when she got to Elisha, she held on to Elisha and said, I'm not going to leave you. Essentially, you have to come with me, come and see my son. I need you there. I'm not going to leave you until you do something. So the first thing Elisha did, when we're going to see this interaction that Elisha had with God, because it was quite intense. And yeah, one of the things you learn looking at this is that at times prayer, there's evidence of prayer that happened quickly in the Bible. I remember when Elijah prayed about God coming to take a sacrifice. That happened immediately. But this one, Elisha prayed you can see that he did so many things and he was persistent. Of course, he knew the woman that she was praying for would not take a no for an answer. So he himself did not, he wanted God to know that there isn't a no, the answer has to be yes. So he prayed persistently. First he sent his servant ahead and said, take the staff. Gehazi went, put the staff on the child. Well, that didn't do anything. Then Elisha got there himself. He prayed, lied on top of the child, spread himself. The Bible described exactly how he put his eyes to the eyes of the boy, his mouth to his mouth, and stretched and prayed over him. Then he felt warmth coming from the boy, coming from the body of the boy, but the boy wasn't awake yet. But the warmth, of course, was signal to him that yes, his prayer is being answered. He got up, prayed, marched, paced the room up and down, and then he lied down on the boy again. Continued praying, and it was at that point that the boy sneezed, I think 7 times, and then woke up. Then the Shunammite woman was brought in. She thanked God through Elisha and then took her son and left. Let us read about this. 2 Kings 4, verse 29 and verses 31 through 37. Any comment? No? Okay, let's proceed. Yeah. 2 Kings 4 verse 29.
Okay.
Do I read?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, 29. Then he said to Gehazi, get yourself ready and take my staff in your hand and be on your way. If you meet anyone, do not greet him. And if anyone greets you, do not answer him, but lay my staff on the face of the child. And the mother of the child said, as the Lord lives and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. So he arose and followed her.
Okay, 31.
31. Now Gehazi went on ahead of them and laid the staff on the face of the child. But there was neither voice nor hearing. Therefore he went back to meet him and told him, saying, the child has not awakened. When Elisha came into the house, there was the child lying dead on his bed.
33.
He went in therefore, shut the door behind the two of them, and prayed to God. And he went up and lay on the child, and put his mouth on his mouth, his eyes on his eyes, and his hands on his hands. And he stretched himself out on the child, and the flesh of the child became warm.
35. He returned and walked back and forth in the house, and again went up and stretched himself out on him. Then the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. And he called Gehazi and said, call this Shunammite woman. So he called her, and she came in to him. He said, pick up your son.
Verse 37. So he went in, fell at his feet, and bowed to the ground, and she picked up her son and went out. And Elisha returned to Gilgal.
Mm-hmm.
So,
no, that's only 37. Yeah. Okay. Then, so the thing here is, this is about the faith of the Shunammite woman. It was her faith that moved Elisha to pray persistently. It was her faith that made Elisha realize that there was no other answer available, and he kind of prayed to God with the same kind of faith. It was her faith. Elisha sort of conveyed her faith to God. Of course, God saw the woman, there's no doubt about that. But her faith her faith influenced Elisha's behavior. Okay. Then, and it was her faith that brought the child back to life. And what she thought, under any other situation, people would have considered a loss, was fully restored. That is, the boy came back to life. The woman thanked God and took her child alive. And as we noted here, it is quite possible. The Bible didn't really say much about her husband, but it is quite possible that her husband, the last thing he had was that, her wife, his wife told him she was going to look for the man of God, but he didn't know
why.
We don't know that he knew why, and he probably never knew that this boy ever died.
No, the Bible mentioned that the man didn't know.
The man didn't know. Okay.
Yeah, that the boy had died.
Okay. Okay. So the Bible mentioned it. We don't have to find it today, but if you find it, we'd like to read it.
Yeah.
Well, this was not, soon after that, Elisha advised the woman, the Shunammite woman, to leave that area with her household, because the area was going to be under famine for a long time. So she obeyed, took her household, and moved to the Philistine, and lived there for 7 years. Then after 7 years, things were getting better, so she came back, but then found out that her home had gone, her land had gone, there was nothing belonging to her anymore. So she went to the king to ask for her things to be restored. But at the time she got to the king was talking to Gehazi, asking, trying to get information from Gehazi about the work of Elisha. Some of the things that Elisha had done, because Elisha was somebody from their area. He had done a lot of things, and the king wanted a record. He wanted this to be documented. And Gehazi talked about this woman and her son. And as he was talking about them, here comes the woman to ask for her property to be restored. And when the king recognized what happened, he gave orders. He actually appointed somebody to a special officer to see to full restoration of the woman's house, the woman's home, and all of the rent or whatever, the proceeds of her land during the time that she was gone, during the time that she wasn't there. So everything that she lost during this period was restored to her. Let us read about this. This is from 2 Kings chapter 8, verses 1 to 6. 2 Kings, did you find it? Yeah. Okay. 2 Kings chapter 8, yeah.
2 Kings chapter 8, still reading from New King James Version, verse 1. Then Elisha spoke to the woman whose son he had restored to life, saying, Arise and go, you and your household, and stay wherever you can, for the Lord has called for a famine, and furthermore it will come upon the land for 7 years.
So
the woman arose and did according to the saying of the man of God. And she went with her household and dwelt in the land of Philistines 7 years. It came to pass at the end of 7 years that the woman returned to the land of the Philistines. Returned from the land of the Philistines. And she went to make an appeal to the king for her house and for her land.
Then the king talked with Gehazi, the servant of the man of God, saying, Tell me, please, all the great things Elisha has done.
Now it happened, as he was telling the king how he had restored the dead to life, that there was the woman whose son he had restored to life, appealing to the king for her house and for her land. And Gehazi said, My lord, O king, this is the woman, and this is her son, whom Elisha restored to life. And when the king asked the woman, she told him. So the king appointed a certain officer for her, saying, Restore all that was hers, and all the proceeds of the field from the day that she left the land until now.
Yeah. So a special officer was appointed to restore everything she had, her home, her land, and all the proceeds from her field for a period of 7 years. Honey, you want to jump in before I summarize what we learned? And, yeah.
Like I said, when you look at the case of if you look at the case of the Shunammite woman, it might look like a simple event, but it's so deep.
Yes.
Deep that I don't know how many people, first of all, this woman was coming from a position where she has been serving God. Just like we have seen with most people who face adversity.
Mm-hmm.
David was just a mighty tool in the hand of God. But he was out at war when his camp was plundered. His wives and children and that of his men taken away. So this woman obviously is a woman of God, serving God. So, she's taking care of God's business by attending to the prophet. So she had this thing. First of all, she didn't start wailing, God, why me? With everything I'm doing for you, you still have to allow this to happen to me. But her service to God, like my sister here said, made her realize what she should do. And that is where her faith comes in. This God that I serve is more than able to, revive this child.
Yeah.
So she went to rest the child, in the house of God, in quotes, which is where she had prepared for the man to be.
Yes.
So her service to God made her know what she should do, and that is inquire of God, put God first. And not try to say, let me tell my husband, let's make arrangement for this boy to come. I know Elisha is going to come by the end of the month. I'm going to ask him why he did this to me. By the time Elisha will come, that boy was already having buried and rotten.
Yeah.
But her knowing God did not work against her this time by making her cry, But it ignited something in her.
Yes.
And that's what should happen to us when we face adversities, especially as children of God. We shouldn't stay and start moaning, God, why is this happening to me? Because the truth is that before you came to the knowledge of God, the way that we know God, to accept Christ, to walk in his way and surrender totally, once you do that, devil multiplies his attempts to, on you.
Yeah.
10 times or several folds more than when you were in the world. So we should be prepared for this kind of thing. And rather than for it to make us speak against God or turn against God, it should ignite something in us. Okay. The other thing I saw with this woman is obedience. Elisha spoke to her and said, take your family and go. This and this is going to happen. Remember, she was a very wealthy woman.
She should have argued.
She could have argued, and then that famine will catch her there.
Yeah.
Or she could have said, if I leave now, what happens to all my houses, all my land, all my this?
Yeah.
But she packed
The much she can.
what she could. She just got her family and left.
Yes.
Obedience to God, no matter what you see around you.
Yes.
Because if she didn't obey, she would have perished. Well, the Bible didn't tell us that. But she would have survived that famine with the others. The third thing that this shows me is there's a kind of confidence we as children of God have in God, knowing whose DNA we carry, knowing the God that we serve. That is what pushed her to go straight to the king and say, she was going to speak for herself, not knowing that God has gone ahead of her. Because it was at that time that Elisha was talking to the king. The king said, tell me about the things
Gehazi
has Gehazi was talking to the king.
king.
Yeah.
Tell me about the things that Elisha had done. And Gehazi was trying to recount about this person that God has saved the child and yes, you know. And then walked in the woman.
Yes.
And Gehazi said, there is the woman.
Yeah.
So God just made a way. She didn't need to speak too much grammar. The king said, what is it? He said, this is what has happened. They've taken my... And the king gave appointed somebody specialist.
Yeah.
You know, not just to give her back her land and her house, but every crop you harvested from her land within these 7 years, you must give her back the money that you made from it. That is overflow from the God that we serve.
Yes.
All those things she thought she would have, she not only recovered what she left behind, she recovered even the ones she did not sow.
Yes.
Because she wasn't the one that planted those things. So God is a God of overflow. When He sees your unwavering faith in the face of severe adversity,
Yes.
He's a God that gives back. And the confidence she had in God, in knowing that I'm going to the king to go and ask for this. One thing that when I was reading the Bible, that the narrative said, it wasn't a common thing. This king was not a very favorable, and he would say, oh, okay, he's a very kind king. He's the son of Ahab. Look at what Ahab did with Naboth's vineyard. Okay? Collected the vineyard. So he wasn't a person you say, oh, he's amiable, I know he's a kind king, he will give. What he actually did was breaking protocol, breaking the status quo for him. Because he would have confiscated the things. But he said, no, give her back. So we can't say, oh, because they're kind, but it's God that has gone ahead to make sure that these things that you will lose. He said, whatever the devil takes from you, he will pay back sevenfold. That's overflow. And God is a God that keeps to his word.
Okay, hi Linda.
Well, what I want to put in here is, number one is the confession of this Shunammite woman. Because as children of God, our confession matters a lot. Because when she even knew, I wonder if I will be able to make such confession, knowing that a child is dead, and still saying,
it is well.
It is well. It is, I don't know how to explain it. Somebody's child, how women are so close to their children and how they hold their children so dear.
Yeah.
And remind you that this is the only child.
Yeah.
And for only child to be dead, and this woman standing and saying it is well, there is no greater confession than that. And because she knows the God she serves, that is why even when the husband asked her, why are you going to the man of God? Is not new moon nor Sabbath day. What is that telling us? We can approach God anytime, anyhow. We don't have to wait for new moon. We don't want to have to wait for Sabbath day. We have the access entrance into the presence of God. There is no ceremony again left for us to enter into God's presence. There is no new moon ceremony, no Sabbath day ceremony again left. We have that access that we can go to God anytime and present our case before God. But what gives us the boldness, the audacity, the type of life this woman has lived? Because as children of God, when we have the right standing before God, there's a type of audacity it gives us. Just like in the life of a child. If a child, maybe you're living in your house and you tell the child, okay, do this, do this, do this. If you're coming back and the child really obeyed you and did those things, the child will be so happy to embrace you because he or she knew that at that particular moment, he or she is in right standing with the mother and can get anything from the mother. That is the way it is. When we have this right standing with God, we have the audacity. And it's the same audacity that even made this woman, Shunammite woman, to tell Elisha, a whole man of God at that time, that this man of God, not anybody has the same access to him. But for her to stand and say, you have to follow me. Because this type of case is not the case for Gehazi. you have to go with me. And because of her life, because of the seed that she has sown in the life of Elisha, because those food that she was cooking and giving to Elisha, that upper room that was made for Elisha, those are seed this Shunammite woman sowed in the life of Elisha. That when Elisha remembered, he can't say no. For somebody that has sown this powerful seed in his life, he has no other option than to go with the man of God. So what is it telling us? We don't have to wait for new moon. We don't have to wait for Sabbath. Even in Walmart, if the need for prayer, if the need to call upon God arises in Walmart, you call upon God there. If it's wherever it arises, you call upon God, He answers. We don't have to wait for any ceremony. And in the later parts of 2 Kings chapter 8, where we read, just like my sister said, the obedience of this woman is too much. And that is what is keeping some Christians out, preventing us from getting to where God has already placed us. Because it's very hard. We can't serve God with our human mind, with our human nature, with our human intellect. Because some of the requests that God wants us to make, or things that God requests from us, in human mind is very foolish. In human mind, it doesn't make sense. But if we can take away our human mind in serving God, there's this woman of God, she said, that you serve God the way God wants you to serve Him. You don't serve God the way you want to serve Him, because you are not God. If somebody hires you to work for him, you work for that person according to what the person tells you this is your job. So her obedience is too much in that area. She obeyed despite her wealth, despite all the things she's going to leave, and she knew that even when she comes back, she's not sure of those things. But because of that obedience, God restored those things that she left, and God made her life even better for her. So it serves to obey God, whether it makes sense to us, or if we read the Bible, some of the requests that God made from His people, do this, do this. When God told Moses that kill the lamb, put the blood at the doorposts, that when the angel of death will come, it will pass over wherever. It doesn't make sense. You think what is the relationship between the angel of death and the blood on the door? But it worked. So whatever God tells us to do, we obey God the way God directs us, instead of using our human reasoning to serve God. Praise God.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we have to. One of the points of that we need to remember from the interaction between the Shunammite woman, Elisha, and her son, and all the things that happened to her, we need to remember that they all started with her having compassion on somebody that she did not know. Mm-hmm. Somebody that she saw, recognized that this person needed something, and then did what she could to provide for the need. The same way that the Good Samaritan recognized somebody that needed help and did what he could to help that person. God created us to be His provider assistant. Being His provider assistant is that from time to time He will place needs in your path, and you are expected to recognize the need and do what you can to address the need. This is what introduced the woman to Elisha, and this is how she got the opportunity to get a son. She was blessed with a son, and how she got an opportunity to bring Elisha back to her home to pray for the child when the child died. We thank you for participating with us in this Bible study, and we pray that you have learned something that will make a positive impact on your life. We pray that you will continue to pay attention to our study of responding to adversity, through which we believe that by the time we complete this study, that we will learn a lot about how ordinary human beings like us responded to adversity, ordinary human beings that are described in the Bible. Thank you for participating, and God bless you.
God bless you.
God bless.